We never did. We had a few places that had them that we would take people, including.
Thank you very much. All right, again, welcome for our first webinar. And I've just introduced our panelists today. And here's a little bit of housekeeping. We will not take any questions during the presentations, but if you do have some, please use the Q&A box below. You can also comment or communicate with others using the chat box. Right now you're muted, but if we have time at the end, we will ask attendees to raise their hands and they can ask their questions. And also the session is being recorded and will be available on our website, which is returnforchange.org after this webinar. Okay, so let's get started. We're very excited to launch our Return for Change campaign. We did this in Hoth this last weekend, where we demonstrated that there's value in bottles and cans. We had 3 collection systems all along the promenade there, and we collected aluminum cans and plastic bottles. The minister was there and he launched the campaign. And we had, I don't know how many volunteers. We had 35 volunteers over the 2 days from the local tidy towns, Hoth tidy towns, from the local scouts groups and the local GAA. And what was nice is that we had Shabra and the Michael Wright catering group donate some money, and that was able to give a donation for each bottle and can that we collected. We gave 10 cents to the Scouts and to Benader GAA Club. So it was really well attended. We had great feedback by people who came by. They all said, oh, this is wonderful. Why haven't we done this in the past? So very, very good. And we hope that we can do these sort of engagements around the country in the future. What are we looking at our Return for Change campaign? So we're pushing for a very robust system. We are, Voice sits on, as well as other stakeholders sit on the DRS working group, and we're pushing for a 90% collection rate, both for plastic bottles and aluminum cans. Tight enforcement and automatic triggers. So if collection rates are not reached, we need to have penalties imposed or something imposed to make sure that we are achieving the targets. We are looking for a commitment to trial a pilot reuse program for glass bottles within 2 years, because reuse is even better than recycling. So this is something that we're pushing for. We want program transparency, just to make sure we know exactly how much we're collecting, where we're collecting, how the program is going. And we want a 3-year review of materials. So if we find that some of the producers are switching to other types of material that not collected or not included in the DRS system, that we want to make sure we know what the trends are. And also we need an expansive public awareness campaign. This is critical. We need to go out into the community, and that's why we're having this webinar, and that's why we want to educate all you who are attending, so that you can go out and talk to your constituents or talk to your people around you about how the DRS would work and why we're doing this. It's really important to get a huge buy-in to the system. So that's why we want you involved. And it looks like most of you know what it is, but just as a reminder, it's for each aluminum can and plastic bottle. When you purchase that, it doesn't matter what kind of drink is in there, whether it's a beer or water or some soft drink, there'll be a deposit. We're not quite sure what the deposit will be. I anticipate it's probably be about 20 cents. We can ask Paul later on. And that will be incorporated into the price, and then you can bring it back to any shop that sells these types of drinks, and you will get your deposit back. And this can be done either through a manual take back. So a lot of small shops will just manually take them back and they store them until they are collected by the system operator, or you can put it through a reverse vending machine. And they will scan the code, see there was a deposit, and then you get a little chit of paper at the end, or you can maybe download it onto your phone, and then you can use that credit when you go shopping. And there's going to be a different way of treating bottles and cans. I mean, you could still put them into your recycling bin. The waste companies will still collect them, but you will lose your 20 cents deposit. So in the future, if you want your deposit back, you need to put your bottles and cans in a bag and take it with you when you go shopping. It shouldn't take you extra trips to the shops, but just it's a different way of collecting this material. And the thing is the material, when it's collected in a separate stream, is much cleaner and much easier to recycle and can be used for a higher quality material. What our progress is right now. So by 2030, we need to recycle 55% of plastic packaging. We're currently at about 37%. And plastic bottles, currently we're about 60%. We need to get up to 90%. So we have a huge way to go. Additionally, we're doing fairly well in recycling, but we're losing about a third of our material, both for aluminium and for plastic bottles. And we're generating maybe about 1 billion plastic bottles each year. And so if we're losing a third, that's about 300 million. And that's not all littered. That's, it goes into your black bin and it's either incinerated or landfilled or is littered. So we're losing some of that. So we need to bring that back in the system so we can use it for another product later on. And the thing is, this kind of system works. We can see in Norway, Finland, Germany, they have very high recycling and collection rates. We need to get up there. And I know in Lithuania, within 2 years, they were able to reach the 90%. So, there's only up. We can only go up from here. And the thing is that we've been here before. We're not, we've seen, as we said from the poll, we had this system in the 80s for glass bottles for reuse. In that system, that they actually collect them, they washed them, they refilled them, and sold them again. And we've seen this sort of system in other countries. So, and there was a poll issued by Voice last year. 88% of people in Ireland support the introduction of a DRS. So I think for policy, it's got huge support, which is wonderful. And as I say, what's going to be in our DRS collection? It will be aluminum cans and plastic bottles, and plastic bottles up to 3 liters. And it will be liquid neutral, as I've spoken with Shane about. So it doesn't matter what's inside the bottle. And there's going to be a variable deposit depending on the volume, I think, of the material. They're still working on this, on the regulation. And who supports this? It's not just an environmental initiative. Tidy Towns, they're at the forefront. They see all this stuff out there. They are really in support of this. Environmental groups, local authorities. I've been speaking with Fingal, and I know Kerry and other local authorities very supportive of a DRS. Repack and support, Beverage Council, the government, recyclers. So it has a broad spectrum of support, which is wonderful. And how can you help? And this is why we want you here. Inform yourself about the campaign, the Return for Change. You can see it on our website there. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Support the legislation. You can see our submission, Voices submission on our website, and tell your constituents. And please help with the educational outreach program. Let us know if, we're going to try to take this public awareness campaign on the road. If you have a community that you would like to get involved or you'd like to host a public awareness event, please contact. The next page, I'll give you the contact details, but please contact Colin and he will try to help you out. And use it yourself, and encourage your constituents, your stakeholders, all the people you know to use it. And we're here to help if you need any information. And there's Colin's details. And if you have any questions, please give him a buzz. And then now that is it for me. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to introduce the minister, if you would like to say a few words yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mindy, and welcome everybody. Thanks for inviting me to talk about the deposit return scheme. So as Mindy said when she introduced me with my amazingly long title, I feel like I'm some kind of ancient aristocrat with lots of different things attached, but I'm responsible for the circular economy. In the last few weeks, I've taken over that division. And one of the big projects in the circular economy division, which is in the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications, is this deposit return scheme. So I'm glad to see that nearly all of you have heard of it from the survey, and also that 100% of you are in favour. Obviously the group of people who are attending this webinar, you might think are not reflective of the general public, but in fact our recent surveys show that 90% of people in Ireland do want to have a deposit return scheme, or in favour of the scheme in general. And I guess it's important that the details and the way that we implement the scheme are such that they don't put people off. So we need to bring people with us and make sure that people think, yes, this scheme is fair and it's rational and it makes sense, And then from the point of view of the person using it, that it's practical, that it's not like it's too much trouble to return my goods compared to the amount of money I'm getting back, or it's too expensive, or you can think of lots of things that could go wrong with the scheme. The thing is to introduce it well. One of the ways to reduce the risk of implementation failure is to find the humility not to reinvent the wheel and to learn from other people. That's why a meeting like this is good. We are, as Mindy said, and other people point out, a lot of us can remember when there was a return scheme for glass anyway in Ireland. So we've done it before, but we know that these reverse vending machines exist in other countries. We've seen them on TV. We've seen them in jurisdictions like Germany. So it's good also to have today the person from Carrick Macross. Is that Andrew Spare? Is that right? Who's gonna talk to us. How you're doing? Going to tell us about how a group of activists, I'm looking forward to hearing this, actually introduced their own deposit return scheme on a local basis, and how that worked, and also from experience from Scotland of how they're planning to implement their scheme, because I think they're planning to do that a couple of months before we plan to do it. So our target at the moment is the third quarter of next year, so the end of next summer. That's our target for introducing it, which I've been told is very ambitious. So I'm looking forward to making that deadline. So why are we doing this? There's just a general mind shift, a general change of mindset about how waste should be handled, and how our whole economy should work. And it's coming from the starting position. The original position was that our economy is based on digging things out of the ground and then making them into something, producing something in a factory, then selling it to people, then waiting for that thing to break, and then chucking it in a field, or later on, a new idea, burning it. And so this is a kind of a change of mindset on that. It's an idea that perhaps it would be better for society if, instead of depleting our resources as fast as possible, if we tried to reuse things. And then this went beyond the idea of recycling to things like upcycling, reuse, and avoidance. And finally, just the general idea that we would be richer if we didn't throw away so much stuff, and if things lasted longer, and if we didn't treat our finite resources as if they were never going to be depleted. We had to take a long-term view on things. I think there's been a general sense that there's been a lot of waste in society, and that we'd be wealthier as a society if we didn't waste as much. So it's moving away from the idea of waste as something that it's just inevitable and grows all the time, something you deal with, to a movement towards a general circular economy. The European Union is on side of this. They're backing up these efforts. It's got sort of support from major economists. It's now national policy. It was in our programme for government last year, and had a meeting about circular economy a couple of weeks ago with the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach, and they had genuine enthusiasm for what's happening here. The division the civil servants I've met in my division, really gifted, and I'm sure they're going to deliver on time, and I'm going to be sitting on their desks to make sure they do. And so it is a scheme that just makes sense. And I think that this summer, particularly at the stage where you weren't allowed to even go inside, well, you're still not allowed to go inside a cafe. You can sit outside now at least, but there's been a lot of takeaway goods. There's a lot of people having their recreation outdoors in parks, and then leaving behind large quantities of rubbish. And it's very hard not to think, as you walk past early in the morning, if you get up and you see hundreds of clear plastic bottles and empty cans, you know that those things would not be there if their value was recognized, and if there was a little bit of money that could be returned if you picked one up, you know that there'd be nothing there. So it's going to help from the point of view of the waste of resources, but it's also going to help from the point of view of unsightly litter, rubbish strewn around the streets. It's just going to cut down on those costs. And in fact, many people who are activists in terms of taking on one of the most basic things you can do as activism in your area is just get together with a group of people and clean your own streets and clean your own parks and just get up and make the place look nice. It gives you a sense of belonging and a sense of ownership in your own community, and a sense that you're in control of your own environment to some extent. And I don't think there's any tidy towns group in the country that would be opposed to a deposit return scheme. I think they're probably expecting to get rich when it comes in. I'm told, there are hundreds of millions of items in Ireland of plastic waste and of aluminium cans that are thrown away each year. And the goal is not just to stop them from being thrown in the ground, but it's actually to reduce the unnecessary proliferation of these items, because increasing the price of them, the ticket price, is going to deter people from using those containers in the first place. So where they can be avoided, I expect there'll be an economic effect where they will be avoided. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the different perspectives from people here today, and I'm expecting to learn something from all of you. So thank you very much, and I welcome your enthusiasm, and I'm all ears. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Minister. Appreciate you being here and your great comments. You're right. You know, the circular economy, we really need to value our resources rather than throwing them away. But I'm not going to talk anymore because we have a short period of time. So I'll move on to James. Can you give us experience of what's going on in Scotland, please?
Thank you, Mindy, and lovely to hear from you too, Minister. That was very interesting. So the situation here in Scotland, the primary legislation was passed in 2009 as part of climate change legislation there, basically because there was one very keen cabinet minister, Richard Lochhead, and there wasn't really a campaign about it from the outside, and the powers were never used. And he, I think, was getting frustrated about this, and there was almost like pressure from within government to encourage people to come forward and start like put pressure on them from the outside, which is an interesting arrangement. So in 2015, we launched Have You Got the Bottle? And this is about a year before the election. And the first thing we really started doing was bringing in people that supported it, organizations. So we brought in more than 100 partners of various sorts, obvious candidates, non-governmental organizations, community groups like those here, recyclers, hotels, bars, wine shops, pony trackers, even one of the trade associations for small shops. The other trade association was vehemently against it, and one of them was vehemently in favor of it. So we worked with the supportive one. I don't really want to do a myth buster. There's enough myths go around about this from various quarters, but we relied on a small number of positive facts, which overlaps a lot with the case the minister's made. So we talk about obviously the impact on litter, which is why the Association for Protection of Rural Scotland would be interested in this. But we also talked about employment boosts. We talked about the circular economy benefits. We talked about the recycling rates, carbon emissions as well. And we also talked about cutting costs for local government. So it's not just street cleaning, but it's also the bin emptying. I found out that in Edinburgh, 2/3 of the volume of the street bins is drinks containers. So almost entirely the air within them. So that would obviously save a lot of time and money. And we also pointed out that it's popular, although looking at Mindy's polling, it's actually even more popular in Ireland. So well done there. In 2016, there was an election and we got a new cabinet secretary who was not as interested in it. I know this is being recorded. I don't think she'd mind me saying that. But the campaign kind of kicked up a gear. We brought in a very conservative newspaper to campaign for it, in part because we didn't want them to campaign against it. So I pitched it to them as a really good, they'd also done work on the carrier bag charge. So we brought the Daily Mail in to help with that. We worked with colleagues at a UK level who were also making the same push. And with them, we also got Sky on board. So they did Sky Ocean Rescue. And we had 24 hours of Sky TV being all about plastic waste and deposit return, which was just it felt like a dream. And then in 2017, we also brought Coca-Cola around. So the beginning of the campaign, they'd almost been public enemy #1. And we were working with some broadcasters to do a bit of an expose on the way they'd resisted it around the world. And at the beginning of the year, we were invited out for dinner and they said, we've changed our mind and we really wanted to fix curbside, but you really can't fix curbside. You have to go to deposits if you want to get recycled material back in, if you want those clean streams of material that Mindy was talking about. So that was the beginning of 2017. And then as has been said, in September that year, the First Minister announced that we were going to have deposits. And actually, I might have thought the campaign was over, but actually most of the campaign has followed the decision to do it, which is a thing that you're going to be wrestling with in Ireland as well. So from then on, we were basically fighting for the best possible system and also a prompt introduction. And we won some and we lost some, is the short answer. In general, we were trying to encourage them to learn from best practice, which in our mind is Scandinavia and the Baltic countries in particular. Germany gets very good results, but in terms of the way the system is administered behind the scenes, it's not very efficient. Individual retailers end up owning the or producers end up owning the materials rather than a system operator owning it all, which we think is more efficient. So anyway, gradually the system design became clear. We got a return to retail model. We got a flat 20 pence deposit. We got all sizes from 50 ml to 3 litre, and the scheme includes glass, aluminium, and PET from the start. We also wanted HDPE and cartons. We did not get them in, but we think, as you were saying, in materials review, we expect that other materials will come in. We actually got lobbied by the carton people to try and help them get into the system, because in places where they're not in the system, the public think that they're a less sustainable product because they're not in the deposit system. So even though we had Tetra Pak arguing that they should be in, and we were arguing they should be in, we still didn't persuade ministers on that one, but I think it is coming. Another one that we lost on was the targets don't start until 6 months after the scheme has been in operation. So you get 6 months with no targets at all. And even then the first year after that is only 70%, which, looking at the introduction of modern European systems like Lithuania, they're going to blow right through. So in a way, I'm not really worried about the targets starting late, because I think we'll just exceed them if we have a well-run system, but it was still frustrating for us. We also, I mean, I'm sorry, this sounds like a list of things that we've lost, but it's also a list of things to watch out for. We were originally we were pushing them to have a launch date of April 2020 or earlier, because that would then give them a year's worth of data before the election. They then announced that it was going to be April this year, which was actually the middle of an election campaign. So that was obviously never going to happen. Then we got delayed to July 2022 as a result of industry lobbying. And now there's another gateway review where they're trying to delay it by 9 months. So Minister, good luck on the timescale. What you've announced is tight, but it is doable. I mean, I was recently looking at the rollout for Lithuania, and I think it's a little under 2 years from the point that you're at to the first cans and bottles going into reverse vending machines. So yeah. So we're expecting very good results. As I say, the third year target is 90%, which is I think the same target that you're looking to meet under the Single-Use Plastics Directive. Your existing results are actually better than ours. We were only at 63% for glass, 50 for PET, and 48 for cans. So you're starting from a better place. One of the things, so as a sideline, I also recently just co-wrote a report with Reloop on wastage. And this is one of the things when Mindy's showing her graph for what's not brought back in, those are wasted containers. They're wasted resources in the minister's phrasing. And we actually have the numbers for that. Scotland's actually way worse than Ireland. Currently, we waste 168 cans and bottles per person per year. We're about third worst in the whole of Europe. I count us still within Europe despite Brexit. I mean, geographically and sort of personally. Ireland is much better. You're currently, this is actually 2017 figures. We estimate you're wasting 90 per person per year. So a little over half. But Germany, where you have a good, as I said, a good in terms of returns, I wouldn't model all their back end, but a very successful scheme in terms of the returns and a big refillable market, they're only wasting 10. So a ninth as many as your current figures, and over less than a 16th of what we're wasting. So very impressive. So I'm just going to talk a couple of last points about what we did during the campaign. One of the things that we did was we took politicians and business people out to see the scheme in operation. I really feel for you that you're doing this during a pandemic and you can't do what we did during 2017 and 2018. So we took retailers to Tallinn to go and just have a wander around, to meet the system administrator, to see it in operation, and crucially to talk to other retailers. So we also took a group to Oslo, and there's a great one there. So we just stopped anywhere. We wasn't set up. We just wandered into a petrol station, and one of the Scottish retailers said to the person working there, "So how often do they collect your empties?" And the guy was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, how often do you get collections?" And he pulled his phone out. He's like, "I just pressed the button on the app and they're there that afternoon." Because they were all worried about space for storage for the empties in their shop. And he was just like, well, as soon as it's approaching close, we just press the button. So that was really useful for people just to see, oh, their exact counterparts find this a really smooth and effective system. We also took an all-party group of members of the Scottish Parliament to Oslo to see how it worked. And again, we did 2 days there, meeting retailers, meeting Infinitum, who are the system operator, including Mark Ruskell, who may be Green MSP, maybe known to the Minister. And it was just really powerful. It was actually one of these very satisfying moments where you see people from all the parties, from Conservative through to Green, talking about just how we're going to have the best system. Everyone was agreed that it had to happen. There were discussions about what should be included, some of the nuances of it. It's just very productive. But overall, I'm going to hand over in a second. This is a really important measure, but it's also a really obvious one. It's one that is in operation elsewhere. We're in a climate emergency and we're in a biodiversity emergency. And the other measures that we're going to need to bring in to address that are going to be much more complicated and they're going to be much more hard work. But judging from the deposit territories I've been to, you're going to see really quickly the results in towns and cities and countryside across Ireland. You know, we were watching Eamon Ryan's work on this in opposition and just delighted to see it as part of the programme for government, and absolutely sure it'll be a project that the whole country will benefit from.
Great, thanks so much, James. Appreciate giving us the Scottish experience. You've been doing amazing work, and we've been following you for the past few years and saying, how can we get it up and running? So hopefully we'll be in tandem when we all get it through. Now, Andrew, would you like to give us your experience of what's going on in Monaghan?
Yep, okay. So welcome, everybody. My name is Andrew Spare, and I'm a member of the Carrickmacross Tidy Towns Committee. And back in, I think it was 2018, we were putting together our sustainability plan for the Tidy Towns. And we decided that we should try and install a reverse vending machine. And the reason being is the amount of PET bottle litter around the town was horrendous, shall we say. So I'd seen these machines in action, and we've talked about Germany there. I've seen them in operation in Germany, in the system there. And as you say, it works very well. And I thought, well, if they can do it in Germany, we should be able to do it here. So talked to Jerry Han and Rita Mulligan, they're the members, active members of the Tidy Towns Committee, and everybody's on board. So the first thing to do was to identify the key stakeholders in the project, and we envisaged it was to be a 12-month project. So the key stakeholders were Monaghan County Council, who were actually very, very good to us. Shabra Plastics, again, they're extremely helpful. Queen Packaging, who is now known as Manock, they were very good to us as well, as was O'Gorman's Super Value store in Carrickmacross. And that's where, with negotiation with the O'Gorman's family, we were able to locate the machine in the foyer to their shop, which is a big superstore in Carrickmacross. So it was an ideal position actually for people coming in and out of their store. Then we had to identify a machine and get a machine. So I'd done some research, and I came to the conclusion that the Tomra machine was the best machine on the market as far as I could see. And so I went after Tomra and managed to persuade them to lease a machine to us for a 12-month period. And so everything came together. By the 30th of September in 2019, now way back, the machine was installed, and we had our launch on that particular day, and we had press at it and RTE News and the work. So got great publicity. So within a couple of weeks, we could see that it was very, very popular with the public. So just to step back and to say how the system worked. So it's not a deposit return system because we couldn't ask Super Value to put a 10 cent on to the value of the bottle that they sold at the counter. So we decided that it would be a recycle and reward system. So in other words, we'd reward the person recycling a bottle, and we agreed that it would be a 10 cent reward. And we also decided that that 10 cent would cover all bottles between 250 ml right through up to the 2 litre bottles. And also we decided that we'd only recycle PET bottles. We didn't go down the aluminium road as well. We just didn't want to complicate the matter. So, so that's where we started. We had to then get sponsorship for the reward section. In other words, we were giving people money back on their bottles. So we got sponsorship again from Monaghan County Council, Shelter Plastics, and Quinn Packaging, Minorca as they are. And that was grand. So we had that set up. Super Value were on board as well. So when somebody or a person used the machine, put bottles through the machine, they received a receipt, a voucher to the value of 10 cents per bottle. And then they use that voucher in the Super Value store and to offset it against their purchases. And so that was grand. So Super Value then kept a check on the amount of money that they gave as a discount, and we as Tidy Towns had to reimburse them with that money. So that's where we were. So we started off on the 30th of September, and it was, as I say, it was very popular. By the 4th of December, we recycled 50,000 bottles at the 10 cents. So we said, at this point in time, we're saying, well, you know, we're going to run out of our money very quickly now, our sponsorship. So we decided that we reduced the 10 cent down to 5 cents. But did it affect everybody using the machine? No, it had no effect. So the people kept using the machine. It was very popular. It was popular around the town, people coming in, our regulars, as we call them. We also had people visiting from other towns in the county. And we also had people visiting from other counties. So we had people coming from Navan and Meath and Cavan and what have you to use the machine. So by the time we got to March, and when the shutdown came because of COVID, we'd actually recycled just over 113,000 bottles at that stage. So a huge success. So just to talk about the machine, the Tomra machine will accept bottles. It reads the barcode on the label of the bottle. It also checks the shape of the bottle. So if there's a barcode missing, it can also recognize the shape. The main thing about the machine, as far as I can see, and you've talked about it before, is that the machine will only accept clean plastic. So if the plastic, you know, if the bottle is dirty or if it has product still in the bottle, the machine will reject that bottle. And so the customer is asked to take the bottle away. So what we did in Counting Across, we provided a bin, a waste bin beside the machine, because people would tend to leave, if the bottle wasn't accepted, they'd just leave them on the floor. So we put a bin beside the machine so that the rejected bottles could be put into that bin, keep the place clean and tidy from a safety and health and safety point of view. So, so as I say, the main thing there was the machine just accepts clean plastic and rejects contaminated plastic. And that's the one big thing. So the machine that we used accepted upwards of 250 bottles into the bin, the container. We didn't have a crusher mounted on the machine for a couple of reasons. One was that with a crusher, there's a little bit more maintenance involved, and Tomra actually didn't at that stage have a service entity on the island of Ireland. And so any servicing that was required for the machine, we did it ourselves. The machine also is AI enabled. So in fact, if a bottle is introduced into the machine and it doesn't recognize the barcode, it will reject that bottle, but it will remember that barcode and that shape, and it will send that information to Tomra's main computer in the UK, and they will check it out, and then they'll say, yeah, that's a bona fide bottle, it's a bona fide PET PET, and so it sends the information back to the machine overnight to say if a bottle of a similar type is introduced again, you can accept that bottle. So that was a very good facility. So the machine is online. It also has an app. We all had an app. Well, all of us, there was 4 or 5 of us, had an app on our phone. So when the machine required emptying, the app would give us a ping, and we'd go and empty the machine when called. So a bit of a difficulty because we're all volunteers, and so but it worked, and so it was, as I say, it was very popular. Public response now, we had response from the county council and all the councillors, everybody there, everybody was well aware of the project. The schools in the town, they used the machine as a project that they were working on. In the college, they used it in the One Good Idea project they were doing. And I think they came first in the regional finals for that project. So as I say, yeah, the machine was very popular and well used by the people. When it was emptied, then another thing or point that has to be considered is that when the machine's emptied, you need to store the bottles or the bags with the bottles in, probably about 250 bottles in that bag. So they are stored before they're being taken away by Shabra Plastics for their recycling. So I just have a few figures here. So with a total of 113,000 bottles which were recycled in the 22-week period, we did an average of 5,162 bottles a week. And so there were 8,554 customers with an average recycling rate of 13 bottles per customer. And the weight of the bottles recycled amounted to 3.9 tonne. So those are the figures, we got those figures from Shabra, the weight and stuff like that. So we got some money back from Shabra. I think it was €300 a tonne we got back because it was clean plastic. So the machine now is, we finished the project. Obviously COVID actually shut us down early. The project is finished, and as far as we're concerned, huge success. We had a webinar last November for the project because we'd had so many inquiries from around the country, from tidy towns, county councils, and even super value stores and people like that. All wanted to know what's the story, how can we get one of these machines? So we decided to put together a webinar, and that happened in last November. And I think probably, Colin, I think you have a recording of that. If anybody's interested, and it's probably about an hour and a half long, but it goes through the whole procedure, and myself talking and Jerry and Rita and what have you. So all the information is on there if anybody's interested in that. So I think that's probably where we are. Any questions? Perhaps we can address those later.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. You're just inspiring. It's wonderful what you can do, just one group and a few good people. And so well done. And you're a pinnacle for all of us. Anyway, let's move on because we have short time. So let's talk to Shane with IBEX Beverage Council. So Shane, do you want to share your slides?
I certainly will, Mindy. Bear with me. This is always a bit of a hold your breath moment as I try to do this. Here we go. Just a couple of slides from my side. First off, good afternoon, Mindy, and indeed Minister, and indeed all the participants this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for allowing the beverage industry a couple of minutes to demonstrate our support, our commitment to making DRS a success here in Ireland. We're inspired by the work of Voice Ireland, and indeed we've just heard some fantastic inspiration from our friends in Carrickmacross, and we're very happy this afternoon to be part of this event. Mindy, you started by saying the public awareness around DRS is going to be critical, and I couldn't agree with you more, and that's why it's so important to have these opportunities the Return for Change campaign, and to allow the beverage industry a voice in these events to demonstrate to the public our commitment to the work that we're doing to make DRS a reality. So just a couple of slides, as I said, from my side. First off, just to let you know that the Irish Beverage Council and Drinks Ireland, 2 units within IBEC, Ireland's national business representation. We represent the beverage industry in all of its sizes, shapes, categories, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. And once again, I can tell you that the producers of beverage products in Ireland are absolutely positive about the introduction of DRS. We're doing everything we can to fulfill our obligations and to support government through the Department of the Environment in making DRS a reality in Ireland. Why are we doing that? Well, we've already heard some people mention the very things that I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon. First off, DRS is the best vehicle to allow Ireland to achieve its targets under the EU's kind of seminal single-use plastics directive, which of course is ready to become law any day now. It reduces litter. That's proven. We've seen this globally. Reduces litter by crucially incentivizing responsible disposal, putting a value on what is currently considered waste. It allows us as producers a fully circular future for our packaging. We have an opportunity now to re-engineer new bottles, new cans, to put right back on the Irish marketplace when we can get our hands on them at the end of the back end of the DRS. So really, really, really very important as well. It's a sustainable solution for generations to come, and an Irish solution which provides lots of Irish benefits, and we've heard very many of them already. The Minister mentioned that his ambition is for a fair, rational system which makes sense and is practical for all users. And Minister, we in the beverage industry could not agree with you more. We are committed to a well-designed, world-leading DRS which is tailored to the Irish marketplace. We, of course, the beverage industry, we are the obliged industry. We will be funding, leading and operating DRS in Ireland, and we're very proud to live up to that obligation. Our project group has been meeting since January of last year. We've invested almost 18 months of research, experience and knowledge into bringing solutions to the Irish government, working with the Department of the Environment on the design parameters, how the system is going to look and feel, how our partners in the chain will work, and crucially, how our citizens, our consumers will interact with the system. Again, proudly delivering on our obligations to make Irish DRS a success. Again, I want to focus on this one in particular. Mindy, you did a great job of introducing the idea around separate collection, and we heard one of the contributors talk about green, clean channels. DRS, we've talked about it reducing litter and being really important in doing just that, but also important for us because, of course, DRS is a proven way of elevating the quality of the returned material. The image on the left is a photograph of plastic bottles that have been collected through the existing curbside system. The image on the right is plastic bottles that have been collected through the Scandinavian DRS system, which, like you, James, is absolutely our ambition, is to recreate a Scandinavian-like system. And look, it doesn't take an expert to tell you the difference in the quality on the screen of what you're seeing there. We need that high-quality plastic to be able to give our consumers back 100% recycled bottles and recycled cans. That's our obligation, that's our ambition, and DRS allows us to do these things. So a two-pronged approach, if you like, Minister, reducing litter, but also allowing us to re-engineer new beverage packaging for a fully circular future. All of our stakeholders that we're engaged with very, very closely, we're going to hear from Paul in the Department of the Environment just after I speak. We also have to just speak about our engagements with our friends and colleagues in Northern Ireland. Of course, Northern Ireland is also beginning its policy journey, if you like, its decision-making journey on introducing DRS. It's vital that the two systems on the island of Ireland are compatible, that they are interoperable, that they speak to each other in a very sophisticated way to reduce the potential of cross-border fraud. That's really very, very important for us. So we're working very closely with the Irish government and also the authorities in Northern Ireland on Northern Ireland's introduction of DRS as well. And again, we are as committed north of the border as we are down here in Ireland. So Mindy, I'm going to keep it very, very simple, light from here. Delighted to be able to commit to this and to demonstrate the commitment of the beverage industry. All our contact details are on the screen. For all our friends, partners, stakeholders, please do contact me if there's any questions. The beverage industry will be leading the solutions here, and we'd love to hear from you and answer any questions that anybody might have. And Mindy, once again, and Minister, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, that was short and sweet, Shane. Thank you very much.
I'm conscious of your time, Mindy.
I'm delighted that you were able to make it today and give us the position of the drinks industry, and we're thrilled that they are on board, which is great. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on Paul McDonald from DEC, the department, and he is the key man working on the regulation, so he will let us know what's going on, next steps. So Paul, over to you.
For my sins, yes. Thanks, Mindy, and good afternoon again, Minister. Second time this week we've met, and I'm sure it's the first of numerous meetings on this. And thanks for the previous speakers. Just to reference a couple, Andrew. Certainly the Carrick-Macross experiment was very successful, and if I can testify to that, I always gauge the level of public interest by the amount of parliamentary questions that are generated by certain initiatives, and certainly that one was, and it caught the imagination. Very well done on that. I'll just give a brief history, sort of background to it, and sort of how we arrived at where we are now, and where we're going over the next number of months, which is key. I came into the waste policy resource area just under 2 years ago, and one of the things bouncing around at that stage was the SUP, the Single-Use Plastics Directive, which at that stage was due for transposition on the 3rd of July 2021, which seemed an age away because pre-COVID, all of that stuff. And allied to that was this question of DRS. And there was a report, DRS has been tossed about for a number of years. And what had happened at that stage about 2 years ago, we had commissioned a report from Eunomia on, whether we should go down this route, I suppose. The Eunomia report was very much in favor of us adopting a DRS scheme because one of the main reasons was it would help us meet some of the targets that we would have under the SUP directive. So the SUP, the Single-Use Plastic Directive, states in Article 9 talks about the steps member states may adopt to ensure that certain rates are reached for recycling, and that's for 2025 an amount of 77% of single-use plastic, by 2029 up to 90%. There was a degree of confidence around, I suppose, that we, with the methods that we had, and that we could have met the 2025, but it would be under serious pressure to reach the 2029. So we then started work on the waste action policies. Which was ultimately published last year as part of the waste action policy for a circular economy. As part of that process, we had a number of, we set up an advisory group, and I know some of the people, Mindy in particular, took part in that. And we were trying to get sort of the views of various stakeholders of what we should do in relation to a DRS, because we know that there was some of the stakeholders were not in favor of it. They thought it would threaten curbside and so on. But anyway, so we had it. In the build-up, we had a series of meetings around that as part of the waste, the genesis of the Waste Action Policy Group. At that time, also overlapping that the new government was put together, and as part of the program for government, the DRS for PET bottles and aluminium cans was included as a deliverable. So the Waste Action Plan, which we published last September, set out some of the time frame for this, that we would have a series of public consultations and ultimately to introduce the scheme Q3 of next year. The Waste Action Plan, I mean, we did set out, I mean, we always hear about the targets that we have to meet for EU and under the single-use plastics, but we did set out a timeline in the Waste Action Plan that we were trying to push our level of ambition. If any of you were familiar with the Waste Action Plan, we set out what we hope to do for, coffee cups and so on, wet wipes and so on. But the key, one of the key fundamentals is, of course, the DRS. So we set about it toward autumn of last year. In October last year, we issued a public consultation that we set out some ideas around it. What, would it be centralized model, financial model, and so on, and just to see what the reaction would have been. And again, as has been touched on earlier, a huge response to this, 366, I think, responses to it. I think unanimously in favor of the introduction of the scheme. So it certainly was something that grasped the public attention and imagination. So on foot of that, we put together a subgroup, an expert group of the stakeholders who would help us arrive at the scheme. So in that group, we had the producers, and as Shane has said, the producers are very much key stakeholders here. This is going to be a producer-led, producer finance scheme. So the producers, in the guise of the Beverage Council and Drinks Ireland, under the umbrella and the careful stewardship of Shane, were key participants in that. And I want to say just up front, Shane, I know we've probably given you some sleepless nights over the last couple of months, but I would heartily thank you for the effort that's been put in to this by yourself and your colleagues. So the expert group comprised of the producers, retailers, the waste industry, and then the NGOs. Again, Mindy sits on this group. So we had a series of meetings from late November into over the succeeding months and the early months of this year. And we issued a second public consultation in May of this year. Now, what we had been doing, we were trying to put some meat on the bones of this scheme. And what we had undertaken to do was to go a public consultation on the legal and technical framework on this. And so we went out with some ideas around that. Again, I suppose a skeleton version of what the legal framework may look like. We got about 46, 47, I think, responses on that, but they were very detailed, very technical, and very, very worthwhile responses. I really want to thank everybody for making the responses on that, because it gives us a very good idea of how we are going to frame these legal regulations. The scheme, we see it will operate as, I suppose, a supercharged version of extended producer responsibility schemes. We have these schemes, as you know, for electrical equipment, tires, for plastics, and so on. Key in all of those schemes is the presence and existence of a system operator. So someone who will, do the heavy lifting and so on. So the appointment of a system operator is a key milestone of this, and we know there has been work going on and so on, and we're looking to that coming to fruition shortly. We will then set about, as is common in all of the EPR schemes, setting out an approval mechanism, an approval document for the system operator. Now, again, I just want to emphasize that the way these schemes work is that, it is up to the market to submit. If anybody wants to think they can do the job as a system operator, they can come forward to us and set out their business plan and so on. It's a convoluted, complicated, finance-heavy mechanism, but again, it is open. There has been some criticism recently, not in relation to this EPR, but on others. Some commentators have viewed them as monopolies. Now, nothing could be further from the truth on any of these schemes. People who want to operate them have the option to seek approval from the minister. So we've had this series of meetings with the expert subgroup to touch on some of the points raised by James earlier on in the position in Scotland, in UK, and Northern Ireland. Clearly, it would be preferable if we moved at the same speed as our colleagues up in Northern Ireland. But we understand that that's not going to be possible. But we are of a mind, and we're absolutely adamant that we will move ahead on this using the timelines that's set out in the Waste Action Plan. We have had discussions with our colleagues up north, and they have sat on as observers in our working group. We have recently had discussions with colleagues in DEFRA in the UK in relation to England and Wales. Again, I think they're moving at a slower pace. Look, it's a much bigger market and so on, and there are other issues there. But we're keen to work in tandem with them as much as we can. So it will be a return to retail scheme. It will be a return to retail system based around RVMs. Again, the Unomi report, which I touched on earlier on, was very much, you know, in favor of the RVM machines. There was some discussion recently about, you know, smart DRS. Again, that's something we may ask the system operator to look at in years to come down the road. We're aware that their technology is being tested at the moment, so we're not going to go public with a system that hasn't been fully tested, but it will be something that we will keep an eye on as it develops. The numbers are quite big. We're hearing, you know, things of up to 3,000 RVM machines around the country, but with a sophisticated logistic program, because there's not going to be an RVM in every retail outlet, so there will have to be detailed program, you know, logistic programs for collection and so on behind them. So again, the issue touched on about public awareness. Clearly, that is going to be key, and that would be a key job again for the system operator here. I think we're starting off from a good base. I think the level of public awareness and acceptance of this, I mean, it has, as exemplified by Andrew and carried across, this thing can grab the the public imagination. So we are at the SUP directive is due for transmission next month. We are working on the regulations around the DRS, and we will be touching base with the subgroup on that. We're not just going to land this on people. I figured there was some discussion earlier on about the deposit. Unomi report was talking about a 20 cent per bottle. You know, and that's something that we will thrash out between the producer, system operator, and the minister. Ultimately, we are keen on having a graduated deposit rate on the multi-packs. There seems to be, almost from what we can gather from research, a unique love affair in the British Isles with multi-packs, be it on soft drinks or beers. So it's something that there are other issues around, you know, sugar levels, obesity, and so on, that would, you know, point us towards a variable deposit rate for multi-packs. We are on target. As I say, we would hope to have the regulations early July, and have the system operator in place at some stage soon also, so we can get into the very much, I suppose, the heavy lifting of how we are going to get this system in, get it up and running, and as Shane has touched on, get it working, you know, as a best in class. So just, I'll hang on there just to acknowledge the work that's gone into this all around. Mindy and her people have been, you know, providing a lot, you know, keeping us on our toes, which is fine. This is absolutely fine with us. The waste industry have moved, you know, again, I think it's fair enough that they you know, initially would not have been in favor of this. They have come around to it. And again, the producers who have very much stepped up to the plate. And you know, we've worked well with them recently. My colleagues in the department are currently involved in a meeting with the retailers, just to ensure that, you know, everybody, that the message is getting out there. So that's pretty much a quick run through it. I'm happy to take any questions along with anybody else on the panel. Thanks for that.
Wonderful, Paul. Thanks for that. It's wonderful to see how this has progressed. And I've been looking for a DRS for the past 20 years. It's been a long haul, and I have been told I'm a pain in the you know what. But anyway, so hopefully we're getting there. I think we have a few questions there, Colin. Do you want to come on and say who?
Sorry about that. Yeah, actually, a lot of the questions that have come in, we've been answering as we go in the chat. I don't know if everyone's been keeping up with the chat and the Q&A, and I think an awful lot of the questions we dealt with. There's a question from Aaron, but I'm not sure. I'll see if I can get Aaron in.
I can let him. I'll allow him to talk.
Okay.
So, Aaron, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead. You have a question?
Okay. Just a question. I'm on the Tidy Towns committee for Ashburn, okay? And every single day I go to do Tidy Towns, and I get loads of them. You know the recycling bottles you were talking about. We all, when I'm out doing a litter pick, there is a large group of volunteers here in Ashburn who does tidy towns. Now the other group can go out because of the COVID and the pandemic, and the amount of bottles we usually pick up is actually lots, and they're not throwing the bottles into we have loads of bins in Ashburns. We have lots of bins, and what they're doing is they're not throwing the bottles. I see every day they just throw the bottles on the ground, and they're getting us to pick up the rubbish.
Aaron, you're cutting out a little bit, but thank you very much. No, and hopefully when we adopt a deposit refund scheme, there'll be value in those bottles and cans, and people will return them. So hopefully we will address all this. And Minister, would you like to come in now?
Yeah, just say to Aaron Harkin there that you've described what it's like in Ashburn, picking up bottles and people putting out bins and people ignoring them and so on. And that is the same experience that people are having around the country in their tidy towns groups, or even if you're not in a tidy towns group, you walk around your area and you cannot believe how many bottles are just casually thrown on the grounds, just strewn around. And if we have a scheme where those bottles are worth money, and people will not throw them on the ground anymore.
Right. Thank you very much. Also, I think there was a question on bottle lids. And what happened to the bottle lids? Oh gosh, I've got a terrible. What happened to the bottle lids? Gosh, I've got a terrible. Did you all get that feedback?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Is that gone now? Yeah. I think that's. I will stop talking. And does anyone else want to come up on the bottle lids issue?
I just make one very quick observation about that, which is when we talk to the system operator in Norway, they have to sign off all drinks containers that come onto the market. So if a drinks producer comes back in with something which is hard to recycle, it might have a layer around the outside, or it might have a bottle cap that's the wrong material. They just say, no, you can't sell into Norway unless you produce something that's better. So from their point of view, they're trying to reduce the amount of stuff that can't be recycled. They're trying to design in better products so it's easier to build that circularity. And then I would hope that our system and yours will do the same.
Okay, see if I'm still having the feedback. All right, any other questions that we have out there? If anyone wants to raise their hands, or oh, we have one there. Damien Reddington, here you go. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Mindy. Sorry, can you hear me there?
Mm-hmm.
Mindy, sorry, Michael Tew here. I'm just sitting in for Damien this morning or this afternoon. So I'm the executive engineer in the litter management unit in Galway City Council. I suppose one of the questions I have is, is it anticipated that the return locations will be all in commercial premises, so shops, for example, or will it be envisaged that we will also roll out receptacles at civic amenity sites, perhaps in public buildings such as county halls, etc.? Or what's the thought process there?
My view on that one is, I mean, we're talking about a return to retailer system, so it will initially be a return to retailer through shops that may have an RVM machine, or there would be some collection facility at a retail premises. We can look at other issues, with civic amenity sites, but certainly no. The short term it's certainly just going to be at a return to retailer.
Okay, thanks very much.
Jane, did you want to come in on that at all? Okay, any other questions? No? And Colin, do we have any more questions from the audience? I think that's about it. There's been a lot of discussion in the Q&A section and the chat function. And I just want to say thank you so much. It's a very dynamic panel. Thank you very much for attending. It's great to hear all the different areas, all the different submissions, both from, on the front line, what's happened in Monaghan, what's happening in the policy end with Paul and the drinks sector, that they're on board. And, and also, James, thank you very much for giving us your experience from Scotland. And Minister, lastly, thank you for being part of this, and we look forward to working with you as this progresses on both the DRS system, but also working with you on other circular economy legislation that's coming down the road. And so I'm sure that Paul and I will have lots of discussions in the future. And if there's anyone else who wants to have a word before we sign off? No? Okay, we will save the discussion. We'll look back and see if there are any questions that have been unanswered. We are going to put this recording on our website, so if anyone wants to re-listen to it, or if they want to share it with their colleagues or people who were unable to attend today, please feel free to do so. And again, thank you very much to all our panelists for being with us today, and hopefully this is the first in many webinars as we go forward. Thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Mindy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a nice afternoon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
You too.